And welcome back to episode 19 of the Tapehead Massacre podcast. My name is Tyler.
And I'm Caleb. What is going on, everybody? Tyler, is this 19?
This is, I don't know. Sometimes I get confused on the numbers. Last episode, we were confused. This episode, I'm just as confused. Not as confused as I was watching the movie we're about to review that I'm going to pull you and go, you'll find out here soon enough, even though we're recording and you'll hear this at a completely different time. It's not live. But I think it is episode 19.
It is. I just checked.
Okay, cool. And just a heads up for all you working people out there, I am still working. I started at 6:30 this morning. Work is getting in my way, but I'm going to give it the old college try. You know, the next 45
Tyler's on the clock right now.
I'm on the clock. Hopefully no one from my work hears this. I might be unemployed by the next episode, but I've come here for you guys, you know, to give the listeners what they want. So I'm going to try to give the next 45 to 50 minutes a good go here and,
cool.
work through it. But welcome again, everybody. And we got a guest today. We got a special guest.
Yeah, we are joined via Zoom, as we pretty much have been doing these things, by a longtime friend of mine, Chris, aka Bearded Film Guy from Instagram. Welcome, buddy.
Hey, what's up? Thanks for having me. I've been patiently waiting for this. I was like, hey, one day I will deserve a spot on the podcast. And I got here, so I'm stoked.
And I know that you're a Cohen fan, so I definitely wanted to make sure you got in. We were going to do the Prowler episode, but we wound up. Well, I went on vacation, and that kind of like forced us to record like way ahead of time, so that way by the time I was out and about, the episode would have aired and whatever. But here we are. We're talking 1985, Larry Cohen, The Stuff. And we're fucking let's want to get into this thing.
How do we start this?
So typically what we do, I think, Caleb, we should mention what we did this past Saturday real quickly, because it was an enjoyable experience.
It sure was. We were in
a church. We were selling tapes and vinyls and baseball cards under the Holy Spirit. It was a great moment. We got to meet some kindred spirits, if you will, in the spirit of God. Who are the people? We got to give them shout outs. There was two individuals. One just commented, by the way, on one of our posts.
Okay, so we got to check out, let's see. Yes, sir. The check is in the mail.
Yeah.
Brett, be the name. And then we also got to meet and hang out with Matthew Wallner, a director from Philly who was also there slinging some sweet tapes.
And he slung the slimiest, the best of the tapes that I happened to miss out on, which, Chris, so Caleb and I had been talking about this for a while. I wanted to review the movie Junior, mid-'80s slasher, a la in the vein of Texas Chainsaw. I think it even does kind of like what Pieces does and has the little slogan about the massacre.
Yeah.
And you can't find it anywhere. You can't stream it. You know, the tapes themselves cost an arm and a leg that I'm right now not willing to give up. And the dude had it there, and he said he was going to sell it. He was originally selling it for 40, and then the dude took it for 20. And Caleb, you were right there, and
I walked up to his table, and like I immediately saw Junior, and I was literally turning around to be like, "Yo, Ty, get over here." And literally the dude next to me grabbed the tape and was like, "Here's the cash," and walked away. And I was like, "No." And we did get there late. So, I mean, it was like any type of like swap and stuff like that. I mean, if you're not there early to get the goods, it unfortunately does, you lose it,
You do, man. It was bad news bears, but that's okay. We made a good friend out of it.
We did.
I'll get my Junior copy one day.
That's why I could never get into collecting the VHS. Like, I appreciate it. I love it. It's my childhood.
Sure.
But Blu-ray is just much, much easier. Even though there still is some really rare stuff of VHS, there's so many cover variants and different copies. And my OCD would be nutty about it, bro.
Yeah, it's
get that.
bad. I mean, I know that like when I was probably a couple of years ago, I just got into like this big Evil Dead phase, and I was just like, I gotta have like fucking 8 different variants of the cover on tape, and I just like I wound up taking a few of them with us to the swap on Saturday because I was just like, I don't need fucking 9 copies of this fucking tape. Like I kept like 3 of my favorites, and that was that. But now here I am. There's a copy of Texas Chainsaw 2 right here, and it's a Dublin, Ireland release. I can't play it because it's phase what the fuck is that? Phase alternate line PAL format, and it doesn't play on American VCRs. So I literally can't watch it, but I already have a copy of it. But I bought it just because the artwork was cool.
Yep, that's me with the Hellraiser Scarlet Box. I ended up getting that.
Nice.
Oh,
And
nice.
yeah, I got it from like an old lady for like $40, even though it sells for hundreds of dollars. And I don't have a region-free Blu-ray player yet, so I'm just like, it's just a shelf thing right now.
Oh, hey, there's quite a few actually on my shelf that I can't watch, so it's all right.
Shout out to the old people. Shout out to the grandparents of the world who just have Blu-rays, DVDs, VHS tapes just still laying around and have no idea what they're worth, but will give it to a smiling face at a low cost.
Yeah.
Shout out to all the grandmoms.
That's it. Love my.
See, my copy. My favorite though, Caleb, is behind you. The Burning. That's dude, kills Friday the 13th for me, man. Kills it.
Oh, dude, the Burning. Okay, so Bad Taste Video, the homies Mike and Grizz, and I believe Anthony was a part of the episode as well. He was. They just covered the Burning, and basically, like it's a hard toss between Sleepaway Camp and the Burning for like best camp slasher. And I mean, you know, Friday's good. It's good stuff. But honestly, Sleepaway Camp and the Burning, I think the Burning wins. I think it takes the cake of best camp slasher.
Yeah, you have like the raft scene from the Burning, and then you have the ending of Sleepaway Camp, and both of they put each other on that level because of those 2 scenes.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, absolutely.
I've never seen the Burning. That is one of
you will.
That's one of the movies I haven't come across yet. Now I'm pretty much, I would say, fairly out of the 3-way we're doing on the Zoom. I might be the horror amateur of the bunch. I would probably say. I know you guys are you're inundated over there, so there's things I still have not seen, and the Burning is one of them. Yeah.
We mentioned this a lot on the show, and it's the sole factor of like there's tons of movies out there. You know, we even said this on Saturday when we were at the meet.
We did.
Was that like it's impossible to see everything, but like the cool thing is that like I'll find something that's cool, you'll find something that's cool, and like honestly, like people that recommend movies and music to you are like the best people to have around, because especially if they have good taste. Like I'm not saying like check out this and it's like fucking garbage, so like like good stuff.
Yeah, but that's, as somebody who grew up with horror thanks to my mom, you kind of wish, like I do sometimes, that I can go back and rediscover a lot of the movies that I ended up doing. Now at this point, in a knowledge point, you're just kind of digging stuff up and seeing what else is out there. You don't have any more the shock of watching the big 80s or even 90s horror films anymore. We're familiar with them.
Yeah.
So, I sometimes wish I can go back and kind of revisit that again.
Chris, and that's a cool point I don't think we've ever said on this podcast, and something I definitely think of quite a bit is you almost get tainted by how much you've seen over the years, that certain things that you went, man, if this were like 10 years ago, that'd have been fucking cool to watch. It kind of dulls you a bit. And that was one of my questions I was going to have for you, and really for anyone listening too, is like, exactly that. Like, don't you wish you could just go back and like see things for the first time again? And certain movies stand out.
Yeah.
Like, I remember where I was, like the emotions that went through me. Like something that I don't even watch now. We just watched it over the weekend at my parents' was The Ring, the O2 US version. And I was like, I remember when that came out and it was a big deal. That's another thing I feel like I miss from my childhood, where certain movies, like everyone asked the question of if you had watched it. Right?
You know why it was a big deal? Because the internet didn't exist, or it existed, but it was in its infancy.
Oversaturation, man.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I feel like, especially like in our school, like, I mean, well, shit, Chris, you too. I know that you pretty much went to a Hick school too, right?
Yeah. I went to Clearview.
Yeah,
Oh,
Clearview.
Clearview.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So that's the whole, like, it's between the three of our schools, like, finding the niche, like, horror fans within, like, your school was, like, slim to none. Tyler,
It
it was
didn't
you and
exist.
I. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, that's it, man.
know,
It's
There
tough,
was
dude.
there was nobody. Like, I remember for me, it started with The Exorcist. Thanks to my mom, it was one of the TV cuts, so it wasn't the extended
Oh, wow.
one that everybody knows now. And still to this day, that movie, I just rewatched it for the first time in like 6 years. And even though I'm sitting in my bed in my house, I'm all comfortable. I'm thinking of 5 years old on the couch, my mom laughing at me. And it brings you back to what that was like. I still remember the first time I saw Scream. It was actually Scream 3 for me. I had it on VHS.
Wow.
And that's, I went back to Scream and Scream 2. And then now as I'm older, and thankfully physical media is to a point where all these classics are coming back out. That's what it is. Most of the time, if I'm rewatching an old movie, there's a nostalgia thing to it that I can't really explain.
For sure. I get that. And one question I have for you about The Exorcist, me and my mom, funny enough, always talk about this. There's a deleted scene that, depending on what version you watch, was added in where Regan's actually crawling upside down on the stairs. Why they took that out, I have no idea. To me, that's one of the creepiest scenes of that movie. But also, too, it might have been because I watched it years later after watching it like a dozen times, to where it's like, oh, it's new, and that pops to me. But I still think it's a great scene that I wish they didn't leave out, unfortunately. But
I think when you look at the 70s, it wasn't like, nowadays the MPA ratings are solely based on, like, you have blood, you have gore. Now they have terror, they have all that stuff. I think in the 70s, they didn't have all these like sub ratings that they gave everything.
sure.
So they were just looking at it as like, this is probably the scariest scene, therefore it's not appropriate in that 70s mindset.
Good point.
Because it's terrifying. That's the scariest scene of that entire movie, and it's so sudden. She's got the blood pouring out of her mouth. It's like, when you look at the rest of the movie, that is the most graphic of them all. So I can kind of see why in the 70s it got chopped.
Sure. That's a good point too. Yeah, the conservatism of, nearly 50 years ago. Yeah, it's a different time, different world, for sure. Yeah.
Body horror was like not really a big thing back then either, at least like, in theaters. So like for like, contortion and stuff like that to be within a film, like definitely makes for, like you said, a more like realistic, scary, part. So
yeah, this is like pre Cronenberg really started getting into, the body horror. So that was kind of unknown, I think. I mean, unless you look at like Freaks, from which I think was the 60s, and that was considered body horror because there was a small person and an overweight person and a tall person. I think that was the only really thing.
And obesity and things like back then were definitely like, you probably didn't see it as too much back then. So like that's kind of like why, a smaller person and a larger is just, so you make a good point there for sure. But with kind of to segue into this, I mean, this film here was definitely a topic in a category of its own, where it's like food horror and like kind of Attack of the Killer Tomatoes type deal, and that type of stuff. So this gives a kind of a different vibe to certain things and can kind of make you a little afraid of what you eat.
True.
Yeah. It's funny. I couldn't help but think of the 90s Power Rangers movie with Dr. Ooze and how they completely stole the stuff's premise.
Yeah. That's a good
point. If you remember that. Yeah, they made the goo. Yeah. Yep. That's all I was thinking of the whole time.
This movie, it took me a while to kind of latch onto it. As we were talking before we started recording, it's so back and forth, and the pace is so frenetic and sometimes spastic that you kind of are like, you got to almost kind of play catch up and sort of readjust to the setting. But the one thing I did like about this movie, and we've talked about it on different episodes too, is sort of the socio-political aspect of this film. If you really look at what Cohen's diving into, is that the stuff is a product that people become addicted to, even though it's basically taking over their bodies and killing them, so to speak. it very much gets down to American consumerism and things like you could attribute the stuff to McDonald's or a Wendy's or an Arby's, pick your, fast food Oreos or whatever the case might be. It's a really cool hint to really what's still plaguing our society in a lot of ways. It's not like it's really gone away either. So it's as much as it was 30 years ago, socio-political comments, it's just as much today too, which I think is pretty cool.
It's kind of ahead of its time, honestly. I mean, is this your first Larry Cohen movie?
So, yeah, pretty much. Yeah, this is my first, and I've known of Cohen and the Cohen brothers for years, but I don't know, for whatever reason, I've just kind of skirted around them, but still,
Well, I mean, so I think those two are disconnected, the, Cohen and the Cohen brothers, but
oh, true.
Larry Cohen was always, he never really was a quality person. If you go back and watch, like, before this, he did It's Alive, and then he did Q the Winged Serpent. He did a bunch of stuff that, like, there was no quality to it. It was like low budget trash. So the stuff in, like, retrospective of his filmography is interesting because it has this very serious, like you said, this consumerism story, which I think was way ahead of its time. But then around it, you have like Mo Rutherford just walking around being ridiculous, and it's like
he is great too, and his character, like him, Chocolate Chip Charlie, it's just like this almost, I don't know what, like, ridiculousness, not to quote Rob Dyrdek's terrible MTV show here, but it's like it's just so out of left field that, like, you can't help but enjoy him. The other thing too, especially in those first scenes when he comes to the yacht and he's meeting with all the proprietors and executives of the stuff, is the audio a little out of sync, or is it just me?
So the whole boat scene is completely, like, dubbed, and it's bad. It is bad.
I was like, I don't know if I like,
but it's the only part. I would imagine that with whatever the budgetary issues were, they probably had way too much background noise going on out there on the water.
The crazy part that jumps out of me about this movie, it had like a $1.7 million budget, like a pretty big budget.
That's a big boy for the 80s.
And you can tell because there is some cool shots in the film. Like, I forget, I think his actual real name's Brian Bloom, because they're actually real brothers in life. I think it's David and Brian Bloom, I believe. Whatever the younger kid's name is. This is how out of the loop I was with this whole movie going through. I can't even remember the kid's name. But like when he's stuck in the oil tanker that gets filled with the stuff, like that's a pretty cool shot, like a very claustrophobic viewpoint. But there's some cool scenes in this film, and looking back at something like an audio issue is pretty interesting on a $1.7 million budget. And one of the things I read too that kind of put things in perspective for me a little bit is I read an article about Larry Cohen saying that, I think it was New World, that basically spurned the budget for this film, had said that it was the original cut was too involved in terms of, too saturated with dialogue and all these things, that they basically cut it up and were like, you got to make this a quicker pace, which makes sense when you view the movie of how, like,
we're missing some things.
It feels like there's pieces missing, but I read that article and I was like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. Absolutely. So, fun little tidbit.
Well, you have, I mean, if I was to try to pinpoint where most of the budget went, I'm going for the hotel scene. Because that scene is bonkers, absolutely crazy. And then I want to know how much money they spent on that. Oh man, what is that called? Like the hole in the ground where they're actually getting the stuff from. That's it's like a pit. Almost.
It was almost like a mining hole. It's kind of like, 'cause that's what they are. They're a bunch of miners. And
it was really funny too, especially seeing this being my first Larry Cohen film. The humor in it's so bizarre, and that like when the opening scene where the dude's like, "What's this stuff?" and he touches it and puts it on his tongue, like no one would ever do that. But like the fact that he's like tasting the actual liquid, and he's like, "It's so great." I'm like, what a way to start a film.
Tyler, have you seen Phone Booth
with
Colin Farrell?
So
and what's Forrest Whitaker?
So I've never seen Phone Booth. I've only seen the previews. I remember when it came out. I remember the previews, and he's like making the calls, and then there's like the fucking sniper or whatever it is, like surrounding him.
Also, Larry Cohen.
Oh,
okay,
fucking
yeah.
All right, well,
I'm just trying to think of some
Cohen,
I'm trying to think of some like other big boy stuff, like you know, a Return to Salem's Lot.
Yeah,
I'm just scrolling through. I'm just scrolling through his IMDb
Which,
right now.
Little plug, is getting a Scream Factory release. I think next month.
Very nice.
Really?
Yeah.
I've only seen the OG.
That's cool.
Yeah. So that's one of those movies where I thought like somebody needs to pick this up soon, and Scream Factory's going through with it.
Oh, cool. Good shit.
Larry Cohen is if you watched, I don't know, did you guys watch In Search of Darkness?
Yeah.
The 4.5 hour. Yeah.
I'm a big documentary guy, so yeah, this I invested a lot of time in both of those, In Search of Darkness 1 and 2. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, they're both incredible. I went through like hell to try to get both of those on physical, but when you all the times that Larry Cohen's in it, and I think he's only in it for this. Oh no, he's in it for Q, the Winged Serpent, and the stuff.
Yeah, he's
just so like it's just like this is what happened. He tells a story about It's Alive, which is like a. And people are gonna hate me for this. It's like a weird mutant killer baby looking thing.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, he tells a story about how on the set in all his movies there's a chicken that people hide, like the crew will hide, and that's the only movie where you can actually see the chicken. And then he goes on to tell a story about how they put a guy in a costume while filming It's Alive 3, and he almost drowned because he was only supposed to go underwater and jump out, and he never did. So they jumped in and had to pull him out of the suit, which filled with water, and resuscitate him. So that's all you need to know about Larry Cohen. It's like that's the kind of stuff that's going on while he's making movies.
Yeah, so he's amazing. You're right, though. It's very like it's a very bizarre, like energy and a bizarre humor to the film.
Yeah,
like it's almost like if an alien tried to understand horror movies and like made the stuff in terms of its dialogue and like how people like interact and like how the cutscenes happen.
It's like Mark Zuckerberg's horror premiere.
100%, dude. 100%. Like the best I think synopsis or microcosm of that is when Mo is in that town in Virginia where he basically figures out that, oh, okay, all these executives who created this stuff are now suddenly gone, right? Like uber suspicious. And he literally walks from the gas station. He may walk a block. He may be 2 feet, like the gas station might be 2 feet behind him. And then old chocolate chip Charlie, who's from the Jeffersons, actually, I believe, literally does this like kung fu, like Bruce Lee, like kick off the car. And he's like, chocolate chip Charlie. And me and my wife are going, what the fuck? But we were laughing as we're watching it. It's just such an out of left field moment, but like,
oh yeah,
like he does a really good job of like catching you on that almost, like to make
every bit of like his like every scene that he's in this film and even some other film like or other sequences in this film remind me so much of Police Academy, and I don't know why, but like there's just like so many Police Academy vibes that happen when I'm watching this, like especially like when Jason is in the tanker scene and he's like walking up and there's like army music playing like marching, and I'm like, this is exactly out of a fucking Police Academy movie.
That's a good point too, because there's a scene which, by the way, I believe the head sergeant of that like militia group, he's in a very famous mafia movie. I can't remember if it's Goodfellas or The Bronx Tale, but he is like he's either a boss or a henchman in one of those movies. I forget his name. You're
talking about Paul Sorvino.
Yeah, IMDb him real quick. He's in like
Goodfellas.
A very Goodfellas. Yep.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he's like the mafia boss in that. And I watched that and went, holy shit. But there's a cool scene that's almost like Monty Python-esque humor where they're all like storming the area in which they make the stuff. And he like groups them together. And I think he says something to the effect of like, we're going to tip the cab drivers like 10%, make sure to get a receipt.
Yeah.
All right, everybody move out. Like, just it's such a funny scene.
Everything with him is amazing in this film.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but that's the funny thing is like, you know, if you really want to get down to like the nitty gritty, there's so much about this movie like we talked about, which is not only consumerism but also like the dark side of corporate business, which is Mo's entire job is to go investigate companies to find out what they're doing that can shut them down or can harm their business. And it's like at the undertone, this could be a really serious, scary horror movie, but it's not. It's funny. It's goofy. The performances are extremely forced. It's like every scene is its own thing. There is no carryover from one to another. But it's all blanketed on this very serious tone of addiction. How our bodies, how the food that we're eating is killing us from the inside out.
Yeah.
It's like when you really think of it like that, the movie kind of scares the hell out of me.
Oh yeah. Well, it's cool too because they play on that, whereas you can cough and like kind of like throw up the stuff, and then like you're good. Like for some of the people that you've seen in the movie, like I think it is shit. I can't think of the character's name, but he's like the one that initially finds the stuff, and he like comes throughout the movie, and like you see him, he like pops up. Like he's the first one in like the convenience store where you see like the mouth like open up real wide and it comes out, and then he's up and back at it like right after that. And whereas good old Chocolate Charlie does not have that same treatment. He which funny enough, that's how I actually found out about this movie like 6 or 7 years ago, and it came up on my time hop like a couple months ago, and there was like a compilation going around on Facebook of like best 80s special effects, and the stuff was in it, and it was the scene where Chocolate Charlie has his transformation, and I was like, this is fucking sick, I gotta see this.
Yep.
And here we are years later.
Yeah, well, I think they reference it in I don't know if you've ever seen Planet Terror.
Yeah,
part of the grindhouse thing. That's kind of what they reference in that scene, that transformation scene, when his jaw just falls all the way to the ground. I always thought like either that was a stuff reference or the Blob. I couldn't really decide which.
Yeah,
but the stuff is kind of like this weird staple in mid 80s horror. It's like this weird, it's like there's really nothing like it. I can't think of anything offhand that I'm like, oh, this is what this stuff is like. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a good point too. And I think a part of the other piece of the article that I read is New World had wanted Larry Cohen to kind of direct a more serious, like scary horror movie, when he's like, all I was trying to build is this like comedy, basically this farce of what was happening, where, I don't think New World really backed it either, which is probably why I got like a limited theatrical release at the time. But there seemed to be competing interests between, who was funding the budget and who was actually in Larry Cohen creating it, which may in itself be why it stood out the way it stood out. Because if you think about 85, I mean, you're right in the thick of 80s slasher films and the hype that came with that and the money that they were making off of those films. So, there clearly was some sort of competing interest there. But to your point, Chris, exactly, I can't really point to anything that resembles, the stuff in that way. Now, what I could say to that is it also plays on what came after the fact with how like bizarrely hilarious this film is, where to your point, there's these very deep, dark undertones of American consumerism, the corporate infrastructure, the executives who are almost sociopathic in that they realize, like, the fact that the FDA, I think, that Mo gets involved with is basically like, oh yeah, we passed it. There's some documents you can review and send back. Yeah,
they're like Dr. Evil level corporate.
Yeah, 100. Yeah, tractor beam. Yeah, like that's it's 100% like what they come off as. But it kind of it sort of seems like a jumping off platform for what came after that had a lot of success. Not in the same way in terms of the humor, but if you look at a movie like Shaun of the Dead or a new movie that just came out that I'm also wanting to see, what's his face from What We Do in the Shadows, if you guys watch that, is in it. It's called Werewolves Within, and it's actually like a horror comedy. But it's very like, it's just so bombastic in its ridiculousness that it kind of seems like a jumping off platform, especially for the time that it came out, so I think that's
well, it works well because you have contrast. You have humor, even like I just rewatched. I've been on a big kick lately with like the 2000s remake. So I rewatched House of Wax.
Oh yeah,
that Scream Factory released, and that was 2005. So this is post Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. Really kind of like the thick of it. And House of Wax is like oddly funny. There's weird humor in it that's so forced. It doesn't fit in it perfectly. It's just forced, but it kind of works the charm of it, because one minute you're laughing, you're like, man, this is stupid. And then the next, Paris Hilton's getting a pipe through her head. And you're like, this is great.
Yeah. it hits on all notes, you know. That's the truth. It's almost, and I can see why certain people would dislike this film, because to a certain personality, this could make somebody uncomfortable, because they almost don't know what they're watching to some degree. Because to your point, exactly, it's so forced that it's almost, some of the humor is unintentional at times. Almost it almost feels unintentional, but then you're like, that might have been intentional. I don't know, like you're almost in a gray area in some ways.
And I think it depends though, because like if you watch, knowing movies now, if you go back and you watch Friday the 13th, there's some really weird stuff in that, as far as like weird, like the camera will linger for a second before a character walks into it, or you could tell like they cut it like 2 seconds before dialogue begins. There's weird, but it doesn't get as noticed in that, because it's not meant to be that. With the stuff, you have a director who is like just really not a great director. He's not. That's not what he does. He wants to make a comedy. So in here, it kind of lends itself as like, man, this is just a poorly made movie, and it's really not. I mean, it's not at all. And the movie's still living on, because you have like right in front of me, I have the Arrow release, which is awesome. Like ridiculously out of print as far as the slipcover and stuff like that, the book in it. And it's like, this movie still lives on.
You know what? It also reminds me, and even though it's a remake, but I think the humor is spot on in it, is a movie like The Dead Don't Die, where it's very like deadpan humor that you really have to be paying attention to kind of like fit things in and kind of get the humor of it.
And understand that it's funny.
Yeah, 1,000%. Where, you know, with this movie, somebody like Mo Rutherford, how he like repeats himself to two different people, like about how his name is Mo because I forget, it's something about like money, and he wants Mo.
He wants, I think he wants Mo money.
Yeah,
or no, he always gets Mo money.
Yeah, but it's funny though, like if you think about that, like he's repeating himself to two separate people, but that's a very true salesman tactic, right? Like you have a script that you stand by.
Yeah,
that's a cool character choice,
especially if he's supposed to be like this guy that infiltrates businesses and exploits them. Like, you know, that's like, you know, hey, my friends call me Mo because I always want Mo. You know, like, you know, it's just like always just like, you know, catchy little line, gives him more of like cynicism almost, you know.
when he's shaking the executive hands and he's like, sweaty palm, drop it off, sweaty palm. Like what an odd statement to make, but like,
dude, he came up on that boat and was like, I came here to fuck shit up. Like that's how he started it. Like his whole presence, I was like, damn, this guy's got a lot of energy. All right, let's go.
And you can tell, I forget, I have it up on IMDb, who played Mo Rutherford.
Michael Moriarty.
Yeah, Moriarty.
Yeah. So it felt like some of his lines were improv too, because there's certain pieces of the dialogue where he actually like overtalks the other characters too. And I'm like, I feel like some of the dialogue might have not been planned, almost like it was very like natural.
He's a frequent Cohen like collaborator. I think he was in, it's been years, but I'm pretty sure he was in It's Alive. Caleb, you might want to double check that, but I think he's like a frequent with Larry Cohen.
And he seemed to be kind of the glue that held the storyline and plot points together quite a bit, Mo Rutherford. Which makes sense because he clearly, I mean, if he's worked with him previously, I'm sure he has an understanding of what Cohen's going for and kind of the narrative and you know, flow of what he's trying to take.
He's got like a very odd James Bond-esque style to himself in this, with the fact that like I'm like, how does this dude end up with the hottest woman in the movie?
Right, like there's
like, for real.
Yeah, it's but it's like an autistic James Bond. Like he's not not really hitting on all the notes, but you kind of know where he wants to go with it. But hey, you know, it worked on her, right? Like she's she fell for it pretty quick. There was a sex scene in that film that was cut out. That was one of the pieces that was cut out in the hotel room. They were actually like getting it on, and they pulled it out of the second cut or whatever you want to call it.
Wonder why.
You would think it would play a part, but
here's the thing. This is the second film now that doesn't have a single lick of nudity from the 80s that is a horror movie. So
true.
Because we talked, what the hell was it that didn't have nudity? We talked about it like a couple episodes ago, and I can't think of.
Was it the Prowler? Definitely did.
The Prowler had a lot.
I was going to say the Prowler has some nudity.
Yeah, that opened up with it almost.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
Scream.
Scream.
There was implied.
Scream definitely doesn't. Yeah, but I'm talking about old. Like we did something else, and Chud.
Chud. Yeah. That's right.
No
Chud.
nudity.
Oh yeah.
Chud. Yeah, no point. Nudity. And I was like, shit, 80s horror with no nudity? That's bizarre.
Shout out to my uncle. Shout out to my Uncle Chuck. That's his favorite horror movies, Chud. Yeah. He reps that hard.
My girlfriend, she bought me Chud, Basket Case, and Society recently.
Wow.
I was just telling you about that, Tyler.
That's a try.
Yeah, we watched Society, and now she's like, I don't know if I can watch Basket Case and Chud, and I'm like, no, you gotta push through.
yeah, you do. Well, you know what? That's one of my wife's favorites is Basket Case, just sheerly for
Belial.
Belial, dude. Yeah, and we mimic his shouts all the time, poorly, by the way, but we'll do the Belial shout every once in a while.
It's funny. I just started thinking because you mentioned Scream. I wonder. I can't think of any Wes Craven movie that has nudity.
That's a good point. You're right. But does Nightmare
1 does.
It does?
Yeah, it's not Nancy, but the friend.
Oh, yes, it does. Oh, yes, it does.
When they're hooking up.
Okay.
Yeah, but she's thrown all over.
There's no nudity in the Mangler. There's no nudity in the Funhouse. No, Funhouse is Toby.
Toby, yep.
I don't know why.
I think the only one would probably be like Last House on the Left.
Yeah, but that's brutal. You don't even need the nudity to get.
But see, that's the whole thing when like you have like these like older movies, like especially in the genre of horror, like it was just like the nudity just drove the movie further back then. Yeah,
And it's funny, Chris. Kind of get to circle back to a point, and we talked about it on the last episode with the Prowler, where you were saying someone like a movie like Friday, where there's certain like cuts that are like things are missing and there's almost this unintentional humor. I talked about it on the last episode with the Prowler, and there's these stare down scenes with like when Otto comes in and kills Sheriff Frazier, and they're just staring at each other, and Otto's all like and it's like 10 seconds too long, but like you almost start laughing and you're like, I haven't laughed in this entire film until right now. Why now? But
I think the Prowler, so when I got asked to come on for that episode, I didn't own the Prowler. I know I did. I owned like an old copy of it, but I upgraded it, got a new copy. Nice. And the Prowler is I don't have a ton of experience in the genre, but like very Giallo.
Oh yeah.
It's very, so I think like a lot of people try to mimic Giallo a lot and it doesn't work. It comes off as very funny.
Yeah.
And they don't understand. God. They don't understand that it's a mood. Like you can get away with a stare down and a nod if the entire movie is brooding and it leads up, it fits. But when you just have a standard slasher and you're going to put in this Giallo moment, it just doesn't work.
That's like how it was with the Tormentor, but like the Tormentor was just like tormenting to sit through. So it was just like was so rough. Fucking bad.
It was rough.
Well, you have, circling back to the stuff, 1985. So you have, like we mentioned earlier, a really strange kind of twist in horror at that moment. People understood what crowds wanted from their movies, but they also were trying to change it because 1985, you had a dip in people didn't want the standard slasher anymore. They were getting tired of it. There were so many Friday the 13th. There were so many attempts at slasher movies. There was so many people wanted something different. So the stuff came out, and I think I can't think of a lot of 80s horror movies that really attacked something that was a serious problem in this country, like consumerism was as head on as the stuff did.
Yeah, you're right. I think because we talked about it in our May of the Dead series where Romero had some like socio-political like hints with Night of the Living Dead having an African American lead. Same with Dawn of the Dead, you know, where it kind of touched on it, but it didn't focus on it directly. Whereas the stuff, it does exactly that. And you know, there's certain lines that stick out with the family, and like I think when Jason's family gets kind of consumed by the stuff, and the father says it kills all the bad things inside you type of deal, where it's like you could attribute that to like full bore addiction, right? Like when do you know people there's stress eating, there's emotional eating. Hell, I do it all the time when I have a stressful day and I'm tired and I'm like, fuck it, get McDonald's. Like it's gonna just kill all the bad things inside me and bring me a good feel. Like that's a very socio-political statement in terms of, and then the overeating aspect. Like what do they do when they have the stuff? They don't eat one container, they eat a multitude of them till they're like literally like almost bursting at the seams with the, you know, the actual stuff. So
it makes me wonder if Larry Cohen had the intelligence of Romero and his storytelling abilities. It makes me wonder if the stuff would be different, because I always think like, was Larry Cohen just like, hey, I don't care, I'm just going to put this front and center, it's going to be very easy to read? Or he could have taken a Romero route where it's like, we can kind of hint at this, and you know, and I think it helps to the charm of this, because if you had that Romero-esque kind of like in the backdrop, you have to be smart enough to pick up what he's trying to tell you. I don't think it would be what it is now.
Well, and you wonder too, I always wonder now that I read that article, I'm like, I wonder what the unedited version looked like, because he said it was more knowledge dense. So you're like, okay, I wonder if he like really carves out a theme here amongst the characters that maybe we're just missing, because you know it as well as anyone. I mean, if you take out 10 minutes of a movie, and especially important parts, I mean, it completely flips the dialogue on its head at times, and you're kind of just like guessing.
I fucking hate edited movies. I cannot stand it. I think that studios need to just let directors do their thing. And I think that with all these 80s, 70s, 80s movies, cut scenes, they need to bring them back. Don't remaster them. Keep them how they are. Let the true vision be seen, because you're just holding back in studios. It's actually going on right now with Robert Eggers, who directed The Witch.
Okay.
I just read today he's doing like a Viking epic, and the studio just demanded heavy reshoots because of audience reception. And it's like, just let the dude make his movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Let it flesh out.
Just let people do their damn thing.
Right.
That's a good thing to bring up. I think that you know, really hits on a lot of points, especially in that period of time, because I mean, there were so many bangers coming out, and you know, on the topic of this movie and that year, there was a lot of competition in 1985. And we'll do a little thing. I'll ask the both of you. Some of these are going to be answers that I know, at least from Tyler. So, but I'm curious. So we're going to do a comparison. What would you rather watch with movies that came out in 1985? And it's going to be The Stuff versus this.
Okay.
So we have, so we're going to let Chris, you got this first one. All right. The Stuff versus House.
Oh man, I'm picking House.
Oh, same. Right there with you.
All day.
Right there. All right. Tyler, I think I know this one. Ready?
Make me a 3-boy on that. Oh, or you give me a different option.
House. I was going to give you a different option.
All right. I'm sorry. I jumped ahead of the game.
No.
I was like, fuck it, I got it from here.
You're in there. You're in there. Okay. Right. The Stuff or Fright Night?
It's easy. It's Fright Night all the time. Fright Night's such a good fucking film. I love that.
Chris?
I could.
It's Fright Night. There's no.
For sure.
No comparison.
We got The Stuff or Day of the Dead?
It depends on how I'm feeling.
I feel that. Well, it's crazy enough because now talking The Stuff, this is now the third movie that we've talked about on the show from 1985. We'll get to the next one in a minute.
Yeah, I can't, dude. If I had a hard day at work and I'm just like coming home, I'm watching The Stuff. If I'm feeling a little bit, I mean, Day of the Dead is, in my opinion, the Romero masterpiece. I think it's a better movie than Dawn, even though I love Dawn of the Dead. But there's a certain just thing with Day of the Dead where I never am like okay after that movie ends. I'm always deeply disturbed and a little bit depressed when it's over.
Yep. It's got to be Day of the Dead for me. I'm a sucker for storyline through and through, which is why I think
all around.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so this one is going to be this one's going to be a funny one. All right, so this is the other movie we've talked about on the show already. The Stuff or Ghoulies? Now that's a tough one because they are
tough.
both fucking wild movies.
Honestly, I'm probably gonna go The Stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna go The Stuff. I don't know. I can't really say why though. Just if I had them both in my hand, I'm probably putting The Stuff on.
I'm gonna agree with it. I really didn't like Ghoulies, to be quite honest. It didn't really hit for me. The only cool thing was Mariska Hargitay just kind of showed up, and I was like, "Fucking A, Law and Order SVU over here." But outside of that, and like some like cool little scenes with the Ghoulies, like they're almost gremlin like, and they're you could have them as a toy, but. The stuff is actually like genuinely funny to me for like I can actually laugh at that film. I could go back and watch it and laugh again at certain scenes. Whereas Ghoulies, I couldn't do it.
All right, so all three for The Stuff. All right,
Yep.
Now all right, last one. There's a few more, but I think I just already know the answers to them. Return of the Living Dead.
Oh.
Yeah. I figured I knew the answer to that one.
We got to review that, by the way. That's one of my favorite horror movies growing up.
Send more cops, man.
That's it.
Send more cops.
Send more cops. 100%, dude. Yeah, we should all get together for that. We should schedule that out. Return of the Living Dead review.
Well, okay, so like, homies at Bad Taste did a live watch of The Burning. So they're like, we're queuing it up. 3, 2, 1, press play. And then they just do a live commentary. The audio is playing in the background. I think that would be a lot of fun to do something like that as well. And it would need to be something that we can have a fun time with, crack some fucking beers, and because that's an easy one to do it too.
It's action packed, man.
Oh, sure. All right, the Tar
Man, baby.
All right, so here's the last one, the actual last one, and then we'll move on. And this one might be an up in the air depending. It's going to be The Stuff or Nightmare 2.
All right, I'm going Nightmare 2 all day. I'm a sequel guy. Friday 13th Part 2 over Friday 13th. I do not say Nightmare on Elm Street 2 over Nightmare on Elm Street, but Nightmare on Elm Street 2 is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And I just love the style of that movie. When Freddy comes, dude, that pool attack scene.
Yeah, dude, that's intense.
Man,
I was also very afraid.
A whole nother level. Yeah.
There's a whole story where my sister pushed me in the pool without swimmies on, and I almost drowned. So I had like an illegitimate fear of pools for like a good 10 years of my start of my life. So that scene really fucked me up. But I gotta agree, Nightmare 2. I lose Nightmare when it gets to like the Dream Child. That I can't.
Yeah, I can show away with it. Nightmare 2 is my favorite Nightmare.
Yeah, I'd say that
for sure.
And New Nightmare. New Nightmare, I think.
I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah,
I liked the whole like Scream 3 vibe with it, where like it was like very self-aware, knew what it was, and then at the same time completely fucking chaotic.
Can I mention I want to mention a hot take on sequels real quick. This came right off, I think it was either 89 or 90, so I don't know, we might be out of the 80s with this one, but a sequel that I thoroughly enjoy that I feel like does not get a lot of praise whatsoever is Pet Sematary 2 with Edward Furlong.
I love that movie.
Fucking so good, dude. Thank you, Chris. God damn, I feel like I just
that dirt bike scene.
Oh,
well, for just him, puts him down,
dude. It's
Man,
brutal, man. It's
him
brutal.
shoving the mashed potatoes, eating the mashed potatoes at the dinner table.
Yep.
Like,
Great film.
Pet Sematary 2 is great. And it's the same director. It's literally the same exact director as the first Pet Sematary. It's fantastic.
Okay, thank you. I feel like I just got like
you're validated.
Yeah, I got redeemed on that one. So
Caleb, are you not a Pet Sematary 2 fan?
Oh no, I am. Oh no.
Okay.
No, I'm in agreement. I'm in full agreement there.
Yeah.
Honestly, I most of the time really enjoy sequels, and for a lot of like the big horror franchises, a lot of the sequels hit a lot harder for me. Texas Chainsaw 2, probably my favorite of the whole Chainsaw series. Nightmare 2, definitely my favorite. Part 2, Friday, definitely I like it more than Part 1.
Sure.
It's not my favorite, but I really do like Part 2. So like, there's, just to name a few, I'm definitely big on sequels. So that that definitely makes an impact for sure. And
that's where
That's
where I just had a conversation with somebody online about the Saw franchise. And I know we're way out of the 80s with that one, but most of the time I argue it's the sequel that sets the pace for the franchises. Like you have Friday 13th, which is trying something new. And then Friday 13th Part 2 comes out and takes that and elevates it. And then that's what spawns the rest of them. You have Nightmare on Elm Street 2, where you have a different Freddy. They're not, he's different. He's cracking a little bit more jokes. He's a little bit funnier.
Sure.
That's what kicked off what that franchise became. Saw 2 was the same. That created the formula for that franchise. A lot of the second movies, I think, do that. And except for the exception of Chainsaw 2, which was just batshit.
And you could say, and me and my mom talk about it. Shout out my mom on this podcast. Well, I've shouted her out twice today.
Shout out Tyler's mom.
Yeah, shout out Tyler's mom.
Mandy.
Yeah, there we go. I'm really not, as far as like horror canon, horror franchises are concerned, of the late 70s, 80s. Hellraiser 2. I thoroughly enjoy that one better than the first. I think it opens up a whole different world and pretty much leads into,
it gives more depth into like the Cenobites and all of the gloriness of what is Hellraiser.
Well, who could forget all the doctor puns that he gives in the final act of that movie?
Sure. So many, in fact.
I do want to say one thing kind of off topic that I do want to thank you guys for, or like just I'm kind of thanking the entire horror community in general, but I'm sure you guys heard the good news about Mahoning Drive-In.
Oh yeah, absolutely, big time. We talked about it on it might have been the last episode or the episode before, because we just came off. We recorded on a Thursday, and I think it happened Wednesday, and like all of that news came from Wednesday into Thursday, and it was we had mentioned it was like we were a very minuscule part of it, but it was pretty fucking cool to see how quickly all that came back around, and how niche the community is, but how it's like death metal to me, this community. In a lot of ways, it's like if you do something decent, it backs you hard. So it's
I was there for the first time last month. We went up there and we saw the Critters marathon with the Chiodo brothers. So they did Critters 1 and 2 double feature.
Nice.
And that place was awesome. And it was only shortly after, a couple weeks after, that I started hearing the rumors of them being bought out and closing. And it's like I'm only there once, and I'm fully down to help those guys in whatever way possible. It only takes that one time.
Same here, man. And I went to Camp Blood with Caleb last September. It was the first and only time I've been since, and I had made plans to go to follow-ups, but to your point exactly, it's like, shit, am I only going to be there one time? That's all I can say I had. Like that almost sucks. It's almost like it's one of those things. If you were never there, it's one thing, but if you were only there once and enjoyed it and then wanted to go back and then didn't have that opportunity, that almost hurts worse, because the feeling of what it was like to enjoy it. So
and I'm looping it back around to this stuff because I really started getting into physical media only a couple years ago, basically, when I really started taking it serious. And that's when I realized like the horror community will not be, or could not be, what it is without every single person buying these movies or showing the support for the boutique labels releasing them. Because if you go back to the early 2000s, nobody thought the stuff would get an Arrow release. Arrow Video would pick that up and come with this awesome booklet, this great release that would eventually go out of print,
right? And
all this stuff. Like you would never think that would happen. I mean, you tell me 5 years ago that the stuff is an out of print Blu-ray from Arrow, and I'm calling bullshit on it.
Yeah, no, for sure.
1,000%. And I think that's what's very cool about, and the VHS swap kind of reinforced a lot of my thoughts on it was, you know, I think, and we've talked about it in prior episodes, where I think there's certain horror movies, a la the stuff, where it's almost kind of reborn over the last 30 years, where it may not always necessarily, it certainly can be new people picking it up, like myself. I'd never seen it prior to last night when I watched it. But, you know, I think this community, the horror community, really backs that, because they realize, oh shit, we could be on the precipice of losing this forever as a medium and being able to see this. And what was funny about the swap was, Caleb, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there were 6 tables. I believe like 5 of them were all horror focused, like in terms of what they were selling, whether it was beta, CED, you know, VHS, DVD, it was all horror focused, which was very cool. And by no means was it billed or marketed as such, but that's what was there. And it's a pretty cool thing that's connected to the community, that really, other than being there Saturday, I kind of had an idea that was the case, but it was like a live version to reinforce that thought, which I thought was pretty fucking cool. And I think a lot of it has to do with horror in general, right? It's not the most prized possession of the film industry. I think everyone pretty much realizes that. You very rarely, if ever, see horror films at the Oscars, except for what just won it last year. You could consider it a horror movie. Parasite, yeah.
Oh, Parasite.
Parasite, yeah. But you typically don't see it. It's kind of the redheaded stepchild of the film industry. So I think that's why people hold on to it so dearly. But I think that's also why certain medias and certain films could have been left by the wayside, if not for the strong backing of the community, which is pretty fucking cool. You know?
Yeah, and I mean, it's 2021, and guess what? Fangoria magazine's back in print. It's a lot more limited than it was, but it's back in print. There is an entire horror streaming service. You know, we got Shudder. The physical media for horror, people say the physical media is dying, and it might be in other aspects, but in the horror community, it's not. There's companies pumping out these old titles, and some of them, Vinegar Syndrome, I know like MVD Rewind, their horror series that they're doing, they're finding the last film reels that exist. And we're finally getting stuff like Scream Factory just did Event Horizon this year, and they came out and they were like, hey, unfortunately, the director's cut, all that footage is gone. Like it'll never be recovered. I think there's maybe like a minute or 2 that they got of it, but the rest of it's gone forever. And Event Horizon is one of thousands upon thousands of movies where there's footage that will never ever be recovered, and nobody will ever see it. And you know, thanks to, I mean, just this year, the Friday 13th box set that Scream Factory put out has extended kill scenes that were cut out of the old Friday 13th movies, and the footage is so bad they just put it as like a bonus feature, like, hey, check out this footage.
Right.
But like it was so cool to see that and to watch that, and it's only an extended death scene, but it's like that's footage that could have potentially been gone forever, and it was gone for a long time until it got recovered. And that was the horror community that challenged these labels and stuff to push as far as they can, and that's what you get out of it.
And I think that's and I think you could point to the Mahoney as a perfect example of that, right? I mean, you know, that's off the backs of, we don't want a piece of history to be completely removed. And to your point, like, we'll never get the director's cut back, right? That's kind of a bummer of a feeling. It's a depressing feeling to think about, but you know, I think us and others like us are doing a good job of at least trying to bring that back in some format, regardless of if it's good or not good, right? But just
all of you listeners.
When I say us, I mean everybody, anybody who listens, everybody.
1,000%.
But that's
absolutely.
We always think about like us. We're always like, oh, cool. What are we gonna get? But I know when I went to that Critter-thon, they did Critters 1 and 2. That was the first time in 30 years that the Chiodo brothers saw Critters 1 and 2 on the original 35 millimeter print. And I was sitting there and I'm thinking, like, man, this is cool for us, but can you imagine them? Like, what it's like for them to sit there and watch that again. I'm like, that it makes me feel good that they were there watching that.
That's all. It's almost like watching like your old home VHS tapes of you as a kid, and you're like, holy shit, I did that. I look like that. I said that. Like,
Yeah, and you're surrounded by people who love your home tapes for some reason. They haven't, but you're surrounded by people who support your old home tapes, and they support you, and they're there paying money to watch your movie.
Right, which is
So it's
got to be surreal. Yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So the fact that we have this, that there's a Blu-ray copy of this stuff sitting in front of me, and it's so crazy because everything's just coming back around, and it's the best thing possible. People like yourself who you love horror being introduced to these movies. There's tons of other people just like you who are discovering these, and they're falling in love with them, and that's just kind of giving way for a new generation of people who are gonna be in the same boat.
100%, dude. And
oh yeah,
I think well, shit, I am past my point of return.
Well, listen. I know you are. It's all good. Listen,
but hey, I don't care. All right, I'll lose my goddamn job for this podcast. I'm dedicated.
Well, listen, here we go. I'm gonna ask one last question. I want to get both of your thoughts on it, and then we're gonna rate this bad boy and wrap this sucker up. All right. So the last question is, what is the stuff? Is it an alien life form? Is it a mineral of the earth that maybe surfaced from the core? It's never explained. We don't really know. We have the colonel or the colonel. We have the colonel say like an alien species. That's the only time you see that. But like, there's no crash landing in the film. You don't see anything come from the sky. It's on the ground. So is this something coming up from the surface? Is this a new resource? Like, an Earth's, like undiscovered resource that's now surfaced after, thousands of years? Let me get your takes. Chris, you go first, brother.
I don't know. I mean, I definitely don't think it's alien. I think not everything that this Earth gives us to eat is good for you. There's poison, there's poison berries, there's poisonous foods, there's poisonous plants. I think it was here, and I think it made its way to the surface, or it was discovered, and that's my take on it.
Cool. I like it. Ty guy.
And to Chris's point, it did feel, especially if you're looking at it in like real time socio-political American consumerism. Yeah, you could say it's like some terrible, like it's what was that shit in Mountain Dew that you used to think killed your semen? Was it yellow 13? It was like yellow something or another in Mountain Dew. But to me, it felt like a parasite. It was like parasitic, especially in certain scenes with like Mo getting covered and suffocated by the stuff. That's actually a funny scene too, when she's trying to like burn it off of him, and he's like,
yeah.
And I think it happens to her earlier, but it's very like Alien, like the movie Alien, where the thing I think actually latches on to one of the guy's face.
The face hug.
The face hug. So it's parasitic almost in that way to me. That's kind of what I looked at. It was like a natural parasite, like a
natural parasite. Okay.
Like a tapeworm.
Like a tapeworm. Yeah. Feeds off you. Yeah. I like that. Cool. Yeah. All right. I like that. All right. So let's see. For me, I'm going to take both of what you guys said, because it's pretty much hitting the nail on the head for what I think. I don't think it's alien. I think it's something natural. Definitely not good. Poisonous for sure. And I don't think it really has a thirst for blood. It just might be a carnivorous bacteria. So, and we happen to be flesh. So, we're there,
That's it.
All right. So we let the guests go first here on the show. Chris, out of 5, Tyler, you got one?
Yogurt parfait out of 5 parfaits, because that's what the fucking thing kept reminding me of. I was like, it needs granola on top.
Yeah, there you go. Out of 5 parfaits, what do you rate this bad boy?
Dude, I'm definitely falling hard 3.8.
Ooh, 3.8. All right.
I like this movie. It's not, it's better than good. It's not great, but it's intentionally placed, I think, right there at 3.8.
Okay.
I like it.
All right. Ty guy?
I'm going to give it very close. 3.5 parfaits out of 5. I think this movie is what you consider like terribly good. Like that's the best way I can describe this film, because it's not, the acting's not particularly great. The storyline's not particularly great, but it works in its bizarreness. That's the best way I can. Anybody who's listening who's never seen the stuff, go watch it. If you want a good laugh, if you kind of want you know, it's not like true to form comedy. It's not true to form horror. It's somewhere in between. And I think for that reason, it's a very cool take on it's a bizarre take on comedy and horror, which I think is, if you're into that stuff, like you're into like the Monty Python, the Dead Don't Die release that just came out, I think this would be a good watch for everyone, because it's a lot of oddball characters that come together in a really cool way. So 3.5 out of 5 for me.
Cool. All right, I'm gonna sneak right in there in between that 3.8 and 3.5. I'm gonna give it a 3.7, and say that the gore is awesome. The special effects are a lot of fun, even though I watched this on Tubi. So anybody that does want to watch this, it is on Tubi for free. If you want to spend the money for it. It's a midway expensive-ish tape. You probably can find a Arrow release on like eBay or something. Chris, that's all your territory there for sure. But I really enjoyed it. I think it's a really fun watch. Like I said, it reminded me a lot of like Police Academy in ways, like just like how the mannerisms like happened and how the events unfolded. And I fucking love the Police Academy series. So yeah, I give this a 3.7 parfaits. So
I say 100% pop an edible beforehand.
Yeah, for sure.
There you go. I mean, honestly, yeah, if you go into this at all with a non-sober mind, you're gonna love this. And to be honest, this is probably one of those films that you can throw on with like a bunch of people in the room, and like you're not really having to pay attention, but like when you look at the screen, you're like, what the fuck? And then everyone laughs and has a good time, you know? Yep. So it's definitely one of those for sure. But all right, cool. Well, listen, Chris, you got anything you want to plug? Your Instagram or anything, any jazz?
Yeah, I mean, my Instagram's BeardedFilmGuy. All I do is really post what I collect and stuff. I'm actually working on a YouTube channel that'll be launching at the beginning of next year. Cool. So I'm working on that. Yeah, that's really it, man. I'm super happy to get on here, and I really appreciate the invite. I'm super excited to now become a part of the legacy of within the first 50 episodes of a podcast that I'm sure is just going to go to the moon and beyond. Aww. So I'm stoked on it, man.
Fingers crossed, baby.
Listen, crossed. Man, you are welcome on this show anytime you want, brother.
100%.
And for realsies. Yeah. And like, we want to get back into the swing of things of doing in-person stuff. And you know, even if like, you know, we were to do an in-person thing, you know, Tyler's halfway from me to you, so you guys could like, you know, carpool shit, whatever.
There we go.
Figure some shit out,
baby.
Yeah, dude, crack some cold ones, you know.
I am always down, man. And like I said, I have a awesome Friday 13th box set with your name on it. It's actually in my collector's case. So it's nice. Not dusty. It's just sitting there waiting for you. It has the original patch, the 3D glasses. So it's got everything in it, and it's got your name on it.
Yeah. So awesome. One more cool thing I forgot to mention that I would feel bad if I forgot to mention is I did thrift a projector like a couple months ago, right? And I was like super stoked on it. And I've been watching movies on it. Just, you know, pointing it at the fucking wall and, you know, having a good old time. However, my roommate Wyatt, when I came home from vacation, there was a fucking big old screen on my bed, and he had found it, I believe, at a relative's house, and it's just a full-on projector screen. And I'm trying to get together with Mikey, who you just met, and like have like a bunch of friends get together and have like Mikey lives in Philly, so we all get together in Philly, and on the back of their like back fence do the projector screen and just like have a night, crack some cold ones, and have like a movie night by the fire. It's happening soon.
I love it.
Sure.
I love
it.
For sure.
I am so down for that. That is like, it's funny because like I have a lot of social media friends. I have a decent following on there, and I don't know any of them in real life. So you guys are like my nerd out.
Us three here are pretty much the only ones in our area that this is our jam, you know?
Except except for the guy who keeps buying all the good horror releases that come out at my local Best Buy before I get a chance to get there. I don't know who that guy is.
Listen, we need to go drop that guy at the podcast and be like, yeah, listen to this shit.
Imagine if he does listen to it.
One thing I do want to say to our listeners, definitely go follow Chris's Instagram at BeardedFilmGuy. He does have a lot of awesome posts on there. He posts a lot of fucking sick movies. His collection is awesome. You need to post a shelfie very soon. That's what I'm waiting on, is a shelfie from you.
It's just not aesthetic. I'll post one. You know what? I will post one tomorrow. I have a 12-hour work shift. I will take a picture in the morning. Okay. I will throw it up tomorrow just for the Tapehead Massacre podcast.
All right, there we go, baby. All right, well, listen, if you guys need some energy to start your days off, check out our sponsor, CampCrystalLatte.com. Use code TAPEHEAD at checkout. Make sure to rate, review, subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. If you're in the YouTube, we have live video on there. Not live, it's uploaded. Fuck it, whatever. And we are on Instagram at Tapehead Massacre. If you don't already follow us on there, make sure you do. You'll get all the information that you need to check out future episodes, giveaways, and events that we have coming up. And shit, yeah, this has been The Stuff from 1985. It's the third film that we've talked about on the show from 1985, and I look forward to talking Return of the Living Dead and some Argento Demons and some other shit that came out. And
that's my favorite. That's my favorite, man.
Yeah, there you go. So,
dude.
But yeah, I'm Caleb.
I'm Tyler.
And Chris, thank you again for joining us.
Thanks guys. Appreciate it.
All right, we'll catch you guys next week for another exciting episode, and we'll figure out what that one is next week.
Oh, should we play it now? Should we try to figure it out? We did it last time. I feel
like we did do that. Okay. Here we go. All right, we got to decide on with the decider.
Use your head.
Oh, it comes
your
quick.
Brain. We should do. Oh fuck! I like all this dead air.
All right, let's help. Ready? Newer, older.
We've done a lot of old. I feel like we got to. Well, we did just do Scream too, so we got the late '90s. We haven't.
Do we want to go? Do we want to do what we were going to do a couple weeks ago?
Do we want to do that, or do we want to creep our way in and do some like early 2000s? Because I feel like that's a left out era of the horror canon. A lot of times people sleep on it.
You thinking of something?
Yeah. You know what? One of my favorite films from. Okay, go ahead. You got it. You had it.
No, go ahead. Good.
I was gonna say one of my favorites. I don't know if this is gonna be a great review or not, but this is, and I'll let the listeners decide too. I love it from the early 2000s. The Descent. I fucking love.
Descent's great. Descent is great. I do love The Descent. I was gonna suggest High Tension.
Ooh, that's a good fucking film. Yeah, that's a good film. Yeah, that's,
and it's a sleeper.
All right, High Tension. Let's go High Tension.
Fuck yeah!
I just saw that on. I think it's on Tubi.
Aja.
It is. It's on Tubi. It's on Prime. It's one of the earlier memories I have of watching a horror movie with nudity. So all right, guys. Well, listen.
We know what runs Caleb's brain. I like boobs.
Well, listen, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next week for High Tension. Enjoy the trailer.
This is another one in the books, guys.